When we think of an oil spill, we usually picture that massive black slick on the water, a total environmental nightmare. But the science behind cleaning it up is actually fascinating. And what's wild is that the solution might literally be hiding in our trash. So let's get into it. See, the moment that oil hits the water, it is a total race against the clock. It immediately kicks off this process called weathering. It starts spreading out, some of it evaporates, some dissolves, and the heavier bits can even sink to the bottom. It's this complexity that makes cleanup such a ridiculously hard job. I mean, it's a huge question, right? It's a massive challenge. You can't just roll out a giant paper towel to separate the oil from all that water, especially once it starts to disperse. So, really, how do you mop up an entire ocean? Well, it turns out the answer starts with some really, really clever material science. We've got to stop thinking about paper towels and start thinking about some highly specialized, high-tech sponges. Okay, so the key here are these things called sorbents. Now, you can basically think of them as specialized sponges, engineered to soak up pollutants. But a regular kitchen sponge is a no-go in the ocean. It just fill up with water and sink. To work, these sorbents need two very specific and kind of opposite properties. First up, they have to be hydrophobic. That's just a fancy way of saying water-fearing. These materials are designed on a molecular level to actively push water away. And this is absolutely critical, right? You want your sponge to completely ignore the ocean and go straight for the oil. But here's the cool part. At the exact same time they're pushing water away, they need to be oleophilic, which means oil-loving. Their chemical structure is just naturally drawn to oil molecules. So they fear water, but they love oil. It's that perfect combination that makes them work so well. And if you zoom way in, down to the microscopic level, what's happening is pretty amazing. The oil doesn't just soak in. Instead, the sorbent has this massive internal surface area, this incredibly complex network of tiny pores. Oil molecules get pulled into this maze and physically stick to the surfaces. It's a process called adsorption, and it's how they get trapped. So for a long, long time, we've basically had two choices for these sorbents, the man-made kind and the natural kind. And for years, that's meant a really tough trade-off. And here's the dilemma in a nutshell. On one side, you have synthetic sorbents like polypropylene. Now, their performance is incredible. They can soak up 70 times their weight in oil. The problem? Well, they're plastics. They don't biodegrade, so you're just creating more waste. On the other side, you've got natural stuff like sawdust or peat moss. Sure, they're cheap and eco-friendly, but they're way less effective, and worse, they can get waterlogged and just sink. Yeah, so for decades, this was the deal. You could pick the super high-tech plastic that worked great but polluted, or you could go with the green option that, well, didn't work so great. It's a classic trade-off between performance and sustainability. But what if you could have both? Okay, but this is where the story takes a really cool turn. Scientists are now pioneering a whole new generation of sorbents that actually combine the amazing performance of synthetics with the eco-friendly side of natural materials. I know, that sounds completely nuts, right? A sponge that's almost entirely air? But this is the key to the next wave of cleanup technology. We're talking about a type of material that's one of the lightest solids ever created. They're called aerogels, and they are wild. The way you make them is you start with a gel, and then you very carefully pull all the liquid out without letting the solid structure collapse. What you're left with is this incredibly light, superporous solid that is, well, mostly nothing, just empty space. And all that empty space is perfect for trapping oil. And this is the absolute game changer. Researchers are now making these aerogels from biomass, specifically from our agricultural and paper waste. We're talking about things like pomelo peels, rice husks, even sugarcane waste. All of it is being turned from trash into these high-performance cleanup tools. This is where sustainability meets super materials. And the numbers, they are just off the charts. We're talking about some of these new bioaerogels soaking up over 113 times their own weight in oil. I mean, that's way better than even the best synthetic sorbents out there today. So, in a perfect world, here's how it works. You toss in this super light aerogel. Its structure pushes away water while its pores grab onto the oil. Then you just collect it and squeeze it out like a sponge. You get the spilled oil back, and the aerogel is ready to go again. Okay, but of course, it's not quite that simple yet. This technology is incredibly promising, but there are still some pretty big engineering hurdles to clear before we see these super sponges deployed on a massive scale. And the number one challenge, the biggest hurdle, is reusability. Just listen to this review. It says a certain aerogel worked great on the first cycle, but its capacity just plummeted after that. So what's going on here? So what's happening? Well, it's all in the squeeze. Remember that microscopic maze? It's incredibly delicate. So when you compress the aerogel to wring out the oil, you can actually crush and permanently damage that fine porous network. It just doesn't bounce back. And with a collapsed structure, you lose all that surface area you need to trap the oil. And it's not just about making them tougher. Scientists also have to figure out how to make them cheap enough to produce on a massive scale. Plus, they've got to prove that these things can actually hold up in the harsh, chaotic environment of a real oil spill with all the waves, salt, and everything else. But look, even with those hurdles, the potential here is just massive. We're on the verge of moving away from that simple choice between effective and eco-friendly to a future where we can actually have both. All right, so let's wrap this all up. What are the big things to remember? At its core, cleaning up oil is all about sorbents that are both water-fearing and oil-loving. For years, we had to choose between polluting plastics and not-so-great natural fibers. But now, these bio-aerogels, made from everyday trash, are totally changing the game. They offer amazing sustainable performance. And the goal here isn't just one magic sponge, but a whole toolbox of smart materials for any situation. And that really leaves you with a pretty amazing thought, doesn't it? This technology shows that all the waste we create, everything from fruit peels to old paper, isn't just a problem. It might just be an incredibly valuable resource, holding the key to solving some of our biggest environmental messes.